A 71-year-old Jewish man was murdered by Arab terrorists this past week as Israel's foreign minister announces that the Palestinian Authority has almost doubled the salaries for terrorists and their families. And a wild story out of Johannesburg, where a plane filled with escaping Gazans was refused entry into South Africa. This comes on the back of a leak revealing that it's the Palestinians' own leadership blocking their escape. Why? Because suffering civilians makes better headlines. We're covering this story and more on today's Judeacation. Welcome back to Judeacation here on JNS TV. My name is Josh Hasten, and we are broadcasting to the world from the JNS Media Hub here in Jerusalem, the eternal capital of the state of Israel and the Jewish people. Getting to everything going on in Judea and Samaria and Gaza this week, let's start with these Gazans who wanted to leave Gaza and flee a war front, and they were stuck on the ground inside of a plane in Johannesburg, South Africa, after the South African authorities, the government, refused to allow them entry into the country. I'm not making this story up. Gazans fleeing a war were refused entry, at least for a short time or maybe several hours, into the country. Here's commentary from Abu Ali Express, and I encourage you to follow him on Telegram. He said the following: South Africa knows how to file complaints at the International Court in The Hague about genocide that Israel is committing in Gaza, but it is not willing to take in those fleeing from there. If you're not willing to take them in, that must mean there's no genocide in Gaza. How about that? They love Gazans, but only until it comes to their own home. What hypocrisy here, folks. South Africa claiming they want to help Gaza, but they won't let Gazans flee the front lines of the war. And it's not just South Africa, by the way. How many other countries say they care about Gaza and are not willing to allow Gazans to flee, like in any other war taking place around the world? Did you see this footage from this plane? These Gazans are stuck on a plane. They would not let them off. The bottom line is they don't care about Gazans. They just don't care. They hate Israel. They'd rather have them be stuck in a war zone as pawns against the state of Israel, whether it's countries, whether it's organizations like UNRWA, which is Hamas, by the way. But countries and organizations like these claim they care, and they just don't. From what I understand, eventually they caved and they let them into the country. And the question that needs to be asked, does the leadership of the Arabs in Gaza or Judea and Samaria, do they care about their fellow Arabs? Do they care about the Gazans on the front lines? So here you had an organization that helps Gazans leave the Strip. They are now under attack by the Palestinian Authority. They are trying to thwart their activity. The PA is coming out against this organization. So again, we had that incident of the plane in Johannesburg, 150 Gazans on board, denied entry into South Africa. Now the PA has been running a campaign against, here's the name of the organization, the Al-Majd organization, assisting Gazans who want to leave. The organization arranges, this is also, by the way, according to Abu Ali Express, for a fee, usually thousands of dollars. These people are willing to pay thousands of dollars. The coordination of Gazans' departure through Kerem Shalom. By the way, this has to be coordinated with Israel. From there to the Ramon Airport, which is near Eilat, and then to the destination country with the possibility of a limited stay. According to a publication by this organization, the Al-Majd, on its Twitter page, the PA is actively working to prevent Gazans from leaving. They don't want them to leave. The PA apparently even sent a delegation to Indonesia to block the activity of this group. I think that's where they're based, to block the activity of this group from allowing Gazans or helping Gazans find another country who is willing to take them in, perhaps until the end of the war. Moreover, Al-Majd claims that the PA stopped issuing passports to Gazans a year ago in order to harm their chances of leaving the Strip, and they encountered dozens of cases each week in which the PA thwarts them. So you see, folks, whether it's Hamas, whether it's the Palestinian Authority, they want these people in Gaza to stay in a war zone, to use them, as I said, against pawns against Israel. But nobody's angered about this. Did you even know about this? Has this made headlines anywhere around the world? There are no protests at Columbia or any of the other schools. It's better for them that Arabs die in Gaza so they can then pin it on Israel. While ironically, it is Israel that's trying to get them out of harm's way. That is the hypocrisy taking place here. That is the real bigotry, discrimination, racism against Arabs in Gaza, not allowing them to leave a war zone. But that's really what the PA is all about. That's what Hamas is all about. And that is what the international community, at least most of them, are all about, keeping Gazans in Gaza no matter what. Also this week, a 71-year-old Israeli man, Aaron Cohen, a resident of Kiryat Arba, he was murdered and 3 other Israelis were wounded at a terrorist attack at the Gush Etzion junction. It was a combined car ramming and stabbing attack carried out by 2 young Arabs from the Hebron area. The IDF confirmed the attack, saying soldiers eliminated the 2 terrorists at the scene. Several explosive materials were discovered in the vehicle used by the terrorists, according to the military. Police were brought in. Bomb disposal specialists worked to neutralize the explosives. IDF Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Eyal Zamir visited the scene of the deadly terrorist attack, ordering the troops to strengthen defenses along roads and in communities throughout Judea and Samaria, including, in this specific incident, mapping and demolishing the homes of the attackers in the village of Beit Omar and in Hebron. According to Palestinian Media Watch, the organization which monitors what's going on within the PA inside their media, all official Palestinian Authority media presented the story as a killing of innocent Palestinian young men. Not even one outlet mentioned that the terrorists had just committed murder. The PA said Israel murdered 2 innocent young men from the Palestinian Authority. Nothing about a terrorist attack, but it's par for the course when it comes to the PA. According to Palestinian Media Watch, PMW, this is consistent with PA ideology and policy of justifying terror attacks, refusing to condemn attacks, and presenting the killed terrorists as victims. Finally, knowing that people will eventually learn of the attack, the PA tried to justify it by falsely claiming that the land on which the attack was committed was formerly Palestinian land. That's how they justify it. They say the Jews came in, the Jews started building here, and that's why these guys carried this out. According to the Wafa news agency, at the junction of Gush Etzion settlement, which obviously trying to make the area illegal, which was built illegally on Palestinian land. Okay, that's what they're trying to do. Say Israel carried out a massacre, a murder of 2 innocent Arabs, and then at the same time justifying what happened, saying that this was on Palestinian land. Essentially, that's what motivated them to carry this out, without even mentioning that they carried out a terrorist attack. And did you see the video of the father of one of the perpetrators of the attack at the Gush Etzion junction? The father on TV says the thing he most looked forward to in his life was to be the father of a martyr, okay? He was happy that his son died a shaheed, which is revered in their society, most in his entire life. This is what he was looking forward to. That's what he said. That's what he told Arab or PA television. So, number one, I would say, whether it's this attack or the thousands of other attacks which took place targeting Israelis, targeting Jews because they are Jews, our government needs to create a real deterrence. And I've been saying this for many, many years. I'm not a military expert. I'm not the chief of staff. I'm not in the government. I'm not going to tell you what has to happen exactly. I talked before about the sappers coming in. I talked about an eventual home demolition of the terrorists, maybe if the Supreme Court doesn't block it. But the government of the state of Israel has to create a true deterrence in which terrorists or wannabe terrorists wake up in the morning and realize it's not worth it. It's not worth it to go out and try to carry out an attack. Now, the PA still operates, of course, their pay-to-slay program, which gives an incentive, financial incentive, to the terrorists who go out. It's on a sliding scale. So the more Jews they murder, the more money they make. And of course, their families, in this case, the 2 terrorists were killed. So their families then make that money. Essentially, they become on the Palestinian Authority payroll. That's basically what this happened. So that plan has to be, pay-to-slay program, I should say, has to be eliminated, number one. But number two, our own government. We have to create a true deterrence, whatever that is, so these attacks stop happening. But we've been saying this for those of us who don't want to see dead Jews. We've been saying this for 30 years. You're talking about government after government ever since we signed the horrible Oslo Accords and we got to the situation we're in now, where in 2024, there were over 7,000 terrorist attacks targeting Jews carried out by Arabs under the PA, carried out by Hamas. We have to create a real deterrence to stop this once and for all. And I pray that it happens very, very soon, because it keeps happening over and over. There was another murderous attack at the Gush Etzion junction just several months ago. Gush Etzion, the junction there, has been really a hotbed since 2015 of these types of attacks. And by the way, let's be clear, the IDF thwarts. They stop more than 90% of attacks. And in this case, it got through. Now, the attack, by the way, when the IDF takes action and kills two terrorists so that they can no longer carry out their murderous rampage, what does the UN say about what happened? They call that settler violence. I kid you not. When that happens, settler violence. When Jews go up to the Temple Mount, settler violence. When Jews defend themselves, settler violence. When the IDF carries out this type of operation at a moment's notice, when terrorists are literally running through the streets of Gush Etzion at the junction, their very busy junction, with knives, and takes out the two terrorists so they can prevent more carnage, the UN then calls this settler violence, and then it's broadcast all over the world, settler violence, and we hear about it, and it becomes a top story in the mainstream media all over the world, even though there are so many more conflicts taking place around the world, even though there is such a greater degree of violence taking place in cities in the United States and countries throughout the world, wars taking place. I don't know how many wars are going on right now, but people then focus on these Jews, and in this case in particular, who were defending themselves, yet the UN then earmarks that to extremist settler violence. So don't be fooled by what you are reading in the mainstream media. Now, should the United States, moving on here, stipulate that Hamas be disarmed in Judea and Samaria? By the way, all the times I used the term West Bank before, I was just quoting other sources. I say Judea and Samaria. It's been like that for 3,000, 4,000 years. I say Judea and Samaria. But should the U.S. stipulate Hamas be disarmed in Judea and Samaria and not just Gaza? This question was asked in an article this week by the Foundation for Defense of Democracies. And to make a long story short, I'm going to read some of the article here. Fundamentally, the answer is yes. Hamas should be disarmed. By the way, that was what the Palestinian Authority was supposed to do back in the early 90s. They were supposed to, that's why they had the military training. That's why they were provided with arms. They were supposed to be fighting Hamas, but the PA, we know, they're terrorists in suits. They never, ever aspired to do that. But now, when we're looking at Gaza and Judea and Samaria, just as Israel is still busy now, even under a ceasefire, trying to disarm Hamas in Gaza, they should also, yes, they should disarm Hamas and all the other terrorist organizations and the Palestinian Authority in Judea and Samaria. So I'm just going to quote here from the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's article. Hamas is a terrorist organization whose leaders and members are principally split between Gaza and Qatar. While Gaza has always served as the organization's nerve center, the West Bank, I'm quoting here, has been its second home for decades and a key territory in the Islamic Republic of Iran's Unification of Areas Doctrine. If you don't know what that is, go check that out. The Unification of Areas Doctrine. Disarming Hamas in Gaza would effectively hobble the group's activities in the coastal enclave. But, and this is what's key here, without applying similar stipulations to Hamas in the West Bank, the Islamist organization and its allies will renew their efforts to foment terrorism on Israel's doorsteps. I mean, I think on Israel's doorstep, I think that's already happening and has been happening. The Jewish state cannot have a de-radicalized, terror-free zone in Gaza while the same exact enemy operates miles from the capital and other major cities without the same constraints. And how can this be accomplished? I'm not going to read the whole article here. How can this be accomplished? By demanding that the same stipulations that apply for Hamas, for example in Gaza, be applied to branches of Hamas in Judea and Samaria. Otherwise, the threat is simply being shifted from being contained in Gaza to being dispersed around Israeli communities in the West Bank, presenting a future decentralized terrorism threat that could see Israel's major population centers become the target of future attacks in a post-ceasefire paradigm. It's a longer article, and I'm not going to read the entire thing right now. But you have Hamas in Gaza, and even though the haters claim there's no Hamas in Judea and Samaria, they exist there, okay? Now, those who are still in favor of a so-called two-state solution, imagine if you had the same perpetrators of the October 7th massacre on the strategic hilltops overlooking Ben Gurion Airport, overlooking 75% of Israel's population centers down in the valley below. I'm talking about the greater Tel Aviv area, from Gadara in the south to Hadera in the north, along the coastline. Imagine if another terrorist organization had full control over those strategic hills. You would have a situation where you could not function as a nation. How can you have a country when terrorists overhead are lobbing mortar shells down at Ben Gurion Airport down below? It's only several kilometers from Judea and Samaria, from the hills. You could have a country. You couldn't have a functioning country in that scenario. So no, Hamas cannot have a military presence in Judea and Samaria. Neither can Islamic Jihad, PIJ, and neither can the Palestinian Authority. So to those out there who still believe that if we only bolstered the PA, things would be quiet, they are terrorists in suits. I just quoted what they report and how they speak via Palestinian Media Watch and their official media outlets. The same thing with your education system that incites to murder from very, very young age, from nursery school, when you have Mickey Mouse style TV shows which call on children to take up arms, that the goal in life should be a martyr, that their purpose on this world is to rise up and murder Jews. That's the type of society you have. When people ask me, and they ask me a lot, will there be peace, or what will it take for there to be peace between Jews, Arabs, in Israel, in Judea and Samaria? As long as the other side continues this hate education, it's not possible. And the next generation is unfortunately already lost because they're being indoctrinated on a daily basis. But to get back to the purpose of this article here, from this organization, this think tank, the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, yes, it's a problem for Hamas to be arming themselves, rearming, and getting themselves prepared for the next round. We can't just focus on Gaza. We have to focus on Judea and Samaria as well. All right, enough of the bad news. Let's get to some positive news here. According to government sources here in Israel, the number of housing units in Judea and Samaria for which tenders have been published this year, 2025, has reached an all-time high. 5,667 units issued so far in 2025. The previous record was in 2018, when you had more than 3,000 housing units. According to Peace Now, okay, and I'm quoting them because they actually do a great job of documenting all of the future housing in Judea and Samaria. Obviously, they're against future housing in Judea and Samaria. I am very much for it, but they do a great job. They're very organized. Okay, I'll give them credit for that. I disagree with basically everything, but I give them credit for being organized. The planned housing units will accommodate approximately 25,000 residents once they're built. So you're talking about 25,000 Jews who will have the opportunity to live in Judea and Samaria. Now, maybe they'll move from other communities in Judea and Samaria. Maybe they'll come over from other parts of Israel. Maybe this is Jews who are making Aliyah to Israel. That I don't know. I don't know who's going to want to buy these houses. But when you have housing for 25,000 more Jews in the biblical historic heartland of the state of Israel, that is positive. So let's focus on some positive. It's the most natural thing in the world, folks, for Jews to live in Judea. That's why we're called Jews, because we're coming from Judea. This is where we came from. This is where we are. This is where we've been for thousands of years. So it's only natural that we build houses. And, the UN will probably call these houses settler violence or who knows what, and people will be up in arms. But this is very, very positive news. Now, unfortunately, with the positive, we have to look at the negative again. According to Israel's Foreign Minister Gideon Sa'ar, the Palestinian Authority has almost doubled the salaries for terrorists and their families over the past year. I mentioned pay to slay. I mentioned it many times before. In 2024, the Palestinian Authority paid 470 million shekels. That's $144 million to terrorists and their families. That was last year. In 2025, it has already committed to paying 700 million shekels, about $214 million in salaries. And the year isn't even over yet, folks. So for any of those who still believe the PA got rid of their pay to slay, because that's what was reported in the lying media, not in the real media, that was what was reported. These are the facts. In 1 year alone, 214 million. Again, as I said, they're basically on the salaries. These people are salaried by the PA for murdering Jews, and they're getting $214 million in 1 year alone. Take that to the bank when trying to understand really the realities of this conflict and why there's still a conflict here. Pay to slay, when you encourage the murder of Jews and pay people, unfortunately, they're willing to do it. Pay to slay has to go. And finally, you want to know why people don't like Jews from Judea? Here's your answer. According to Human Rights Watch, Israel's expulsion of tens of thousands of Palestinians, these are their terms, from 3 West Bank towns in early 2025, their terms, West Bank, amounts to war crimes and crimes against humanity. This is a report released this week by the fake organization which claims to care about human rights, called Human Rights Watch. This is what they claim. They're calling for international measures to hold Israeli officials accountable and stop further alleged abuses. The U.S.-based group said that 32,000 residents of Jenin, Tulkarm, Nur Shams were forcibly displaced by Israeli forces during Operation Iron Wall in January and February of this year. The displaced have been barred from returning. Hundreds of homes were demolished. It's a 105-page report called All My Dreams Have Been Erased. That's the name of the report. And I want to know about that name. Did they put together a report titled All My Dreams Have Been Erased after 1,200 Jews were brutally murdered by Hamas and the other terrorists in Gaza? Does Human Rights Watch care about the dreams and hopes of Jews in Judea and Samaria, in the kibbutzim in southern Israel? The answer is no. There's no chance they put together a report called All My Dreams Have Been Erased when it comes to Jews who were murdered on October the 7th. This report is a modern-day blood libel. Israel fights terror, and Human Rights Watch would be happier, unfortunately, if there were more dead Jews. That's essentially what they're saying here. Whatever Israel does, and I'm confident this report is full of total lies, is to fight terror. That's what we do, yet Israel is the bad guy time and time again. There's lies, the report has no context, no fact-checking, and this is how they operate. This is their modus operandi. And again, why do people hate Israel? That's what I started off by asking. Why do more terrorists decide to strike? They use these types of reports as their excuse to murder. And that's why telling the truth on Israel is so important. So shame on this fake Human Rights Watch organization for spewing lies and literally giving the terrorists another excuse, whether it's building in Judea and Samaria, whether it's Israeli soldiers who save lives and protect and make sure that more Jews aren't murdered, which they call settler violence. Whatever it is, organizations like this give, unfortunately, the terrorists an excuse to go out and murder. And that's why it's so dangerous. That's why oftentimes the pen is mightier than the sword. And it's so important that you get your information from accurate sources and understand the realities. Of course, jns.org, the place where you should look and understand the realities of the situation here. So when you see words like settler violence, don't automatically jump and assume it means that there is so-called settler violence taking place. You have to get the truth. You have to get the truth about what is happening in Israel and Judea and Samaria so you can understand the real stories and you can understand the realities of the situation here. And that's really what it comes down to. So don't fall for this mainstream media, for these lies. Don't fall for 105-page reports claiming that Israel did X, Y, and Z. Out of context, not understanding the true realities in which Israel is defending its citizens, which the IDF, whatever steps they take, are in defense of its people, while Human Rights Watch wants to send Israel to the international courts and whatnot, and essentially are giving, again, as I said, giving terrorists excuses to go out and carry out more of their, unfortunately, more of their deadly attacks. That's going to do it for today's show. Make sure you go to JNS TV for all the amazing content that is provided on a daily basis by the amazing team here. Go to jns.org for all the latest breaking news from Israel, the Middle East, and the entire Jewish world. Make sure you subscribe if you're not already a subscriber. And don't forget, this is a reader-based platform, a donation-based platform. So do what you can to give to JNS so that we can continue to spread the truth from Israel on a daily basis. I want to send a shout out to the people behind the cameras here. Ryan Lifshitz, the man in the control room, our producer here, Esther Eden, station manager, Yuri Sveretsky, and Zach Sickerman. Thank you for all you do. And we will see you next week on Judeacation here on JNS TV.